Hello and welcome to Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy. I'm your host Leo, and today we are talking about the 2002 film Resident Evil. So this is an adaptation, and, well, it's a vague adaptation of the Resident Evil video game. So, let's start with my history, like I like to do. Overall, my history with the Resident Evil franchise as a whole is spotty at best. It's a game series that I've had kind of a tangential interest in. You know, like I've been kind of interested here and there. I own a few of the games, but I haven't really played any of them. My first, experience with Resident Evil was either the seventh game came out, and I saw some stuff about that, how it was returning, and I at that point had watched some videos here and there on Resident Evil as a franchise, and it's very interesting. I do find it as a franchise a very interesting thing. As video game history, it's very interesting. But the first game, I got the remastered version on PS4 for free because it was a PS Plus giveaway thing for Halloween at one point. And I started the game, got to the first save point, and then I stopped. Because overall, I'm not all that big on horror games, personally. I'm willing now, more than ever, to actually try a horror game here and there. But I really don't like horror games. Watching a horror movie versus playing a horror game, two vastly different experiences, because, you're in control of the character in a horror game, while for a horror movie, you just sit back and relax and enjoy the ride. Watch the idiots make the bad choices. Instead, when you're playing the game, you're the idiot. You make the bad choices. But, yeah. So, overall, I didn't, when I first got Resident Evil 1, I didn't do a whole lot with it. At one point, I did try to play the game, but it became me pretty much just trying to follow a guide way too closely, and I wasn't having fun, so I decided to stop. I was like, nope, I'm not really having fun, because I'm going from point A to point B following a guide. Now, I'm not against guides overall. I love to use them for bigger games where I can see the list of missions that I have to do and know how many missions are left in a game, and I can just kind of use it as a checklist of okay, I'm working my way through the game and I know I'm getting close to the end. So that's nice. But it just didn't really work for the original Resident Evil for me. It worked fine for the original Final Fantasy, but not the original Resident Evil. As for the movie, I've enjoyed the movies a bit, I'll be honest. One time, my brother wanted to go to the theaters to see the new one, and in preparation, he bought all of them. And since he was going to have me tag along with him, to go watch the movie in the theaters, he let me watch all of the original movies. So I sat down and watched them, and I found them fine. As it is, I do have a deep fascination with video game adaptations. I have the Max Payne movie, I have the original Doom movie with The Rock in it. And yeah, I just really enjoy video game adaptations as a concept, and even if they're bad, I do enjoy a good bad movie sometimes. And I do have a small personal hope to collect as many of the bad video game adaptations as I can, because they're just an interesting thing to have. And now this is part of it. I do have my own collection of the Resident Evil movies. And it's all 6 of them. Although the way that they're stored in the case is agitating. Because it's one of those things where it's a single case. And it's like a normal DVD case, except for the well where you put the disc is a bit deeper. and they're just all stacked on top of each other. And they're like multi-movies. So the first disc has the first and the second movie. Second disc has the third and the fourth. And then it goes the fifth and the sixth have their own discs. And yeah, it's definitely one way to do it. But yeah, so that's kind of my history. I watched it then, and I've had an interest in it, although as a franchise in and of itself, it was also the first 4K movie I watched. It was the first, like, when I got my 4K TV for the PS5, the first movie I watched on it that was 4K was Resident Evil 1. So that was a fun experience. But yeah, that's kind of my history. You know, I've had an interest. And as an adaptation of the games, it's not really, especially this first one. But let's kind of hop into the plot. So the movie stars Mila Jovovich as Alice, and she is the main character of the franchise, the movie franchise at least. Relation to the game, none. She has no relation to the game. But she wakes up in a bathroom after a beginning sequence in which we kind of go into this facility and something goes wrong and everyone dies. Then we follow Alice as she wakes up in the bathroom, gets dressed, and goes exploring around this abandoned mansion. She gets attacked by a guy who it's later found out is a cop. A group of commandos come in, break it up. Then they all go down to what is being called the Hive, a place called the Hive, which is an underground facility under the mansion. They come across someone else who, on the train to the Hive. Overall, the setup to this place is weird because it's a mansion, and then under the mansion's a train that goes to the Hive. But on the train is a guy who also has amnesia, because Alice, when she woke up in the bathtub, she had amnesia. She doesn't remember who she is, where she is, what's going on. But she's there. It's revealed that Alice and the guy on the train were guarding the mansion, pretending to be a married couple. Although I think at some point it's kind of revealed that they might have actually been a married couple, or maybe not. It's weird because there's a lot of flashbacks in this movie to what was going on, because over time she starts remembering things and little bits and pieces keep coming back to her. It's the classic amnesia plot where oh, it's this person, then she's told this, which may or may not be true, but then she comes to realize it's this, which may or may not be correct in her mind, but it's one of those things. But yeah, so they go to the train, find him. It's explained that they were working with Umbrella, the Umbrella Corporation, to guard this facility, and now this group of commandos have been sent in to find what happened in the Hive. So they come across this laser grid system as they approach the Red Queen's chamber, which kills a bunch of people because it's a laser grid system. Which, funnily enough, I think that laser grid system makes a reappearance. It might actually be in some of the games. I know for a fact that this specific laser grid system is in the recently released Resident Evil DLC, where one of the deaths that you can have happen is actually very similar to the one from this movie. So that's interesting. They're able to disable the trap and the rest of the people get through. But in doing so, they end up releasing all of the zombies and the containers holding the special zombie for this movie, the Licker. So they end up getting attacked and end up splitting up. Matt, the cop, it's revealed is there looking for information on his sister, who had infiltrated the facility, like somehow, kind of like a corporate espionage thing, but to find proof that they were doing super unethical experimentation, which they were. At this point, Alice is kind of starting to regain her memories, and when Matt tells her this, she comes to the realization that, she was the informant, the person that helped get her in to the facility, and was trying to... Alice was the inside person trying to help do this job. But, obviously things went wrong. But she does keep that information to herself. Eventually, after, all the running around, they are able to reunite, and they start to devise a bit of a plan to leave. As they're escaping, though, one of the commandos that was killed comes and bites one of the other people before he's taken down. Then Alice goes back to get an antivirus from the lab, but it's gone. Then I guess both Alice and the guy that was supposed to be her husband remember that he was a thief who had taken both a sample of the T-virus and the antivirus and had stored it on the train, so they have to go back to the train. But at this point, Spence, having remembered that he is the bad guy, starts to go against the team, but he ends up getting bitten. As he makes it to the train to take the antidote, since he's been bitten, he gets killed by the liquor, which finally makes its appearance. The Red Queen then warns Alice and Matt that they have to kill the one person that was bitten, Rain, one of the commandos, because she's too far gone. But they try to administer the antidote regardless, but it doesn't really work, and she ends up turning, and they end up having to kill her anyway. The liquor that killed Spence ends up attacking them. They're able to fight it off, but it's, really hard to kill. Eventually, they're able to get it knocked under the tracks, and they make it back to the mansion, in which they're immediately ambushed. The cop, Matt, who got injured by the liquor, is taken away, and he's to be put into the Nemesis program. And then Alice is taken to a hospital in Raccoon City, where she escapes, and it sets up the sequel, where it's kind of more closely tied to the second game / the third game. But yeah, that's the movie. So it's interesting. They definitely try their best to include elements from the games. I think that's definitely one way that you can do a video game adaptation. It's definitely an interesting way to do a video game adaptation, which is kind of fuck off most of the plot from the original games and try to make something vaguely original. It's definitely one way you can do it. I mean, hell, they made 6 of these movies, so they've at least felt like they were doing something right, I guess. But overall, I think it's okay. It's definitely unique. When you're doing a mostly original adaptation, the key thing to introduce, for me, is just elements. You have to, for casual audiences, you have to have it to where it's not so much backstory that they lose interest. But for video game fans, for the ones that know the series, you have to give them something to point and look at and say, I know what that is. I recognize that, and it looks just like it did in the game. And I think for the most part, this game adaptation does that. You know, you have the zombies. You have there's zombie dogs in this, and they look okay. You have the liquor. It's all CGI, I believe, but it's all right. It's very lean, but it's all right. It's pretty good. But yeah, I think overall they did an okay job when it comes to making a video game movie that's mostly original. As we're going to talk about next week, we're going to talk about Silent Hill, which is it's a different situation. Silent Hill. But this one, supposedly, when I was doing some research, because I wanted to look into it a little bit, they had been trying to make a Resident Evil movie for years before this one had come out. And they had originally gotten George A. Romero, the director of Dawn of the Dead. He was originally going to write and direct the Resident Evil movie, because he had, at the time that they were considering having him do it, he had done a commercial for Resident Evil 2. And they were like, oh, let's see if you could write a movie. And he was originally going to make it quite faithful to the original game. And on the Wikipedia article where it's talking about this, it's very funny, because it's one of those things that you look at and you're like, yeah, that kind of makes some sense. And it says that he had his secretary play it, record the footage, and then he would use the footage to kind of base his script off of. And I found that very funny, because it's like, yeah, of course he didn't play it himself, because why would he? But I do think that was very interesting. Supposedly he wrote multiple scripts that were kind of faithful to the original game. Although Chris and Jill were going to be like romantic interests. Have a romantic subplot, which I don't fully get, but But yeah, they decided to not do it. Well, because all of their scripts were rejected. Supposedly you can see his scripts, or at least the scripts were a part of like a collection thing that has been taken over or something. Actually, I want to check something. Yeah, he is. Is George Romero doing anything? That's something I want to know. Oh no, he died. Okay. See, this is why you double check things. Yeah, he died in 2017. Didn't know that he died. Because you hear about a bunch of different stuff that he worked on fairly recently. I don't know, I need to look into this. I need to look into more of what he's been doing. But yeah, I would have loved to see what his version would have been like. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, surprisingly good. Because, I mean, he is one of the original people that did zombie movies. Yeah, he has a lot of producer credits all the way up to 2011. And then director credits all the way to 2009. Yeah, he did a Resident Evil 2 commercial. Oh well. Maybe someday the script will end up somewhere. Who knows? Anywho. But yeah, so they'd been trying to make it for years. Eventually they got Paul W.S. Anderson because he did the Mortal Kombat movie. And they were like, let's see what he does. and instead he decided to do something completely different. Oh, actually, according to this, it might have been swapped around because it was originally titled Ground Zero, and then 9/11 happened, and yeah, that changed some things. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, overall, I think as an original thing, it's okay, though it starts very weird. As a Resident Evil specific thing, it's also okay because it does have at least some elements. The only issue is that it decides to just forego all continuity. Like, supposedly, one of the reasons that they decided to say no to George Romero and the other guy that was writing a script at the time was because that, one, George Romero's was going... They read it and they were like, oh, this is going to end up as NC-17 if you continue through with this. So, no. But as for the other guys, they were at that point deciding, we probably shouldn't make an adaptation of the first game because it'll feel a bit dated by then. And it's like, what do you mean dated? So, I guess at that point they were deciding to go in a bit more of an original direction because they didn't want to have it really tied to any of the games because it would feel too dated. But the next movie, Resident Evil Apocalypse, I think it's called. That one is set in the city and it feels a lot more like 2. In fact, it has some characters. It starts to introduce more characters, like I believe it introduces Ada Wong and Leon Kennedy. I think it even has Jill Valentine in it. And then it also introduces Nemesis. So it's kind of a semi-adaptation of 2 and 3. So it's something. It's interesting, for sure. But, yeah, overall, I think video game adaptations... There's a wide variety of them. And your expectations shouldn't be 100% tied to the original game. But if... It needs to, at the very least, hold elements of the games. Be that characters, locations, or, enemies. The Super Mario adaptation, like the original one, the one that I've talked about on here, that one is okay. It's okay. Well, it's terrible, but it's okay in that they were at least trying to do something original. There was Mario, there was Luigi, and then there was a Princess Toadstool. At least I think it was Toadstool. Or was she Daisy? I can't remember. But yeah, so there was a princess, there was Mario and Luigi, and they went to save her. That kind of thing. But it took a little bit in the way of too many liberties. With Bowser being a weird lizard business guy and whatnot. It's very weird. So that's a good example of bad, but interesting at least. This is a good example of different and interesting. And the next week's Silent Hill is a good example of... I think overall it's an okay example of an adaptation. It's an adaptation. Some things are changed. Some things are switched around a bit. But overall, it's an adaptation. I wouldn't necessarily call it a really good adaptation. I wouldn't call it a super bad adaptation. It's an adaptation. But that's going to be next week. We'll talk more about it then. the challenge ended last week, so we don't really have much in the way of book stuff to talk about. But I guess I can do a quick reminder that this episode, along with Silent Hill and Alien, are going to be... They are pre-recorded and being doled out throughout the month of October while I am off on my adventure. So keep that in mind with how short these are, because, well, I'm kind of rush recording them, so sorry about that. And overall, while I don't have any updates personally currently, I might maybe do one or two shorts updates, because I should have access to internet, at least more reliable access to internet, while I'm out. So I might do a couple of shorts updates while I'm out there, or I'll just be posting some short stuff. And I should be, fingers crossed, streaming. Yay! The first stream actually might be the same day that this episode goes out. I'm not entirely sure. Fingers crossed. Otherwise, I will have had to buy a monitor, because where I'm going, the TVs seem to be fairly small, and they're hotel TVs, so I'm not entirely sure if I'll be able to actually access them and hook up my PlayStation. I don't know, but we'll see. Otherwise, I will probably buy myself a monitor and do it that way. You know, needs must in these trying times. But anywho, with that said, I guess that's gonna have to be about it. Short episode today, but Resident Evil and video game adaptations in general are kind of short to talk about. Plus, this is the first proper episode in a while without an update tied to it. It's weird. It's weird not having an update. It's also very weird not having to read, because I've just been having like this weird itch, like I need to read something. But I'm trying to save a Halloween party for later, and I'm trying to not get into anything too, bulky that I can't at least put down to read Halloween party, It's complicated. But anywho, though, I believe with that said, we are done for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys liked this and are watching/listening on YouTube, feel free to give it a like, comment, and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Check out my streams. I'll be streaming much more often in the coming days, because I need to get through Spider-Man and Miles Morales before Spider-Man 2 comes out. And when Spider-Man 2 comes out, I will be streaming it. It'll probably be a blind stream, because I literally won't have time to play it on my own before or anything. So I'll probably stream my reactions. So expect a lot of awkward silences during the game, because I'm actually gonna be focusing on the story. I'll also maybe be doing a couple of Call of Duty streams here and there, because the beta's happening currently. I mean, as I'm recording this, it's happening, and it should be kind of going on while I'm out and about. So I might do one or two Modern Warfare 3 beta streams, because I think that would be kind of fun. But yeah, with that said, that's about it. Feel free to rate and review it on whatever podcast catcher you use. Personally, I use Podcast Addict. That's pretty fun. It's a pretty good one. But if you use Spotify or iTunes, it should be available there too, or Google Podcast. Anywho, though, feel free to rate and review, share it with your friends, and I will talk to you guys next week, or at stream. Feel free to hop into the stream and yell at me for being bad at video games, which I usually am. I also might figure out maybe doing one horror game stream at least. I don't know what. Let me take a look at my catalog real quick. See what I have in the way of horror games. I don't have much downloaded. I could do Castlevania. That's horror game adjacent, at least. Dark Souls is also technically horror game adjacent. Doom is also kind of horror game adjacent. I have 2016 Doom, Classic Doom, Doom 2, Doom 3, Doom 64. Fallout 76 is horror game adjacent. I could do the Halloween Town level for Kingdom Hearts. I don't know. Just spitballing here. Oh, Medieval Resurrection I have downloaded. Always a fun time. Let's see. Oh, I do have Resident Evil 7 downloaded and Resident Evil 2. So I could also do a Resident Evil 2 stream. Maybe I'll do that the first day I'm there. I don't know. I could do a couple of streams of that. Maybe finish the game while I'm out. Why not? It's something to do. Or I could play Untitled Goose Game. Because I have that. It's not necessarily horror, but it's there. I don't know. It's a fun time. I might stream Resident Evil sometime during October. Because why not? I have it, so I can stream it. Anyway, with that said, thank you guys once again for listening. I'll talk to you guys later. Goodbye.